information of an introduction and then using the coordinate system, and also we will be doing graphing. So this is one of those concepts that I always hear my students say, I just couldn't get that graphing stuff. So I hope this will help you in having a little better understanding of what we're trying to accomplish. When we talk about a rectangular coordinate system, we talk about basically the grid that is defined by two different points to locate something. So this little grid picture is an outline of everything basically that you're going to work with. The vertical axis is our y-axis, the horizontal axis is our x-axis, and the Roman numerals here will label what we call the quadrants. Now they're specifically labeled with Roman numerals, and so if somebody asks you to locate a point by quadrant, you would identify it by quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, or quadrant 4. So it's important that you remember these, and they're labeled with Roman numerals. Now the origin, notice the very middle point is 0, 0, and that middle point is what we call the origin. Both the x value and the y value there would be at 0. Now each point that we try to locate has to be associated with an ordered pair. So you have to locate something as far to the right or to the left, and you have to locate it as far as being up or down. So you have to have 2 points, and that's why it's called an ordered pair. Now when you put the ordered pair together, the x coordinate is always listed first and the y coordinate would be listed second. And the ordered pair then really better should look like this. So I'm going to move that y down so that it looks like this. It's always listed in parentheses with a comma between them, with the x coordinate listed first and your y coordinate listed second. Now be careful, because that locates one point on the graph. You never talk about them in terms of being separately, because it takes 2 of them to locate one of the points on the graph. Now the point lines up with both the x value and of the ordered pair and the y value of the ordered pair. So you got to have both where they meet. So if I'm going to find an x number and a y number, I basically locate both and then cross up to see where they're going to meet. So down here we have a sample of where to do that. Now on this particular one, I'm going to label each of these individual points with the label of the points, and that is the ordered pair that finds them. Now, so here's your x-axis and here's your y-axis. I generally go to the x number first and then go to the y, and if you want, I'm going to number these every other numbers, so count them by 2s, and it just is a little easier than writing so many numbers on the page. Now when you number, you number the space, the lines, not the spaces. So this line would be -2, this would be -4, and 0, 0's in the middle. So I'm going to locate this first point. I'm going to go to -2 on the x-axis and then 5 on the y-axis. So that first point right there would be located here, and it would be -2, 5. 4, 0, so I'm going to go to 4 on the x-axis, so I'm going to go out 4, but I'm not going to go up or down any, so this point is located just on the x-axis. This would be 4, 0. Okay, -3, -2, so I'm going to go -3 and down 2 would put me right here. So this would be -3, -2. 0, 2, so I don't go anywhere left or right, but I'm going to go up 2 spaces, so it would be right here on this axis. So this would be 0, 2. Then I have 1, 4, so I go over 1, but up 4 would put it right there. So I have 1, 4, and then I have 2, -5. So notice something about each of these points. If I put my little quadrant numbers up here, you can also see something else. If you notice in this first quadrant, any point that I choose out of this quadrant, the x value would be positive and the y value would be positive. So as I look at these points listed here, this one is a point that has a 1, a positive, and a positive. So I know that point has to be in this quadrant, and there it is. Okay, if I move over here, my x's have now gone on the negative side of the number line, but my y values are still positive. So this one has a negative number for x and a positive number for y, and there, negative 2, 5 fits that one, and it's in the right location. So by looking at the points and their signs, you can determine where they're going to go on the graph before you even bother to do it. Down here, my x's are all negative, my y's are all negative. So this quadrant, the third quadrant, is a negative, negative on the signs. And then when I come back around to quadrant 4, my x values have gone back to positive, but my y's are still negative. So it's helpful to know that when you're plotting points. Now, notice that we have 2 here that are not on a quadrant in any of the quadrants. We have one that's on the x-axis and one that's on the y-axis. So this point, this 4, 0 point, is called an x-intercept because it's on the x-axis. So if you have an x-intercept, it's going to be on the x-axis. And notice it has an x number. It has a number for x, but it always has a 0 for the y value. So it would look like this with an x value and then a 0 for the y number. Now the other side of that is this one. This one has a 0 for x, but it has a number for y, and it's located on the y-axis. So this one is called a y-intercept because it's located on the y-axis, and it looks like 0, comma, with a y number. Now that can be a negative number or a positive number that you put in for x. If it were a negative number for x, it would just end up on this. It would be an intercept over on this side of the number line. And for y, if it had a negative on the second coordinate, it would end up down in this part of the quarter. So of the rectangular coordinate system. So this is information you have to know. You have to understand what an ordered pair is. You have to know how to label the quadrants of the graph. You have to be able to identify and understand when I say x-intercept, what are we talking about? When I say y-intercept, you have to understand the vocabulary of things we do in math, and it helps you understand better. So this page is important because of the vocabulary part that's on it. Now, in your homework assignment, one of the things that you're going to do in this section is graph lines. Now, a line that is going to be graphed is going to have 2 variables in it, and the variables relate to the axis that they're going to be located in, just the same quadrant system that we were talking about. Now, on the one way and the basic way to graph a linear equation is to make a t-chart, and then you have some values. So what you're going to have is you have coordinates that you are given. So you're given an x value, and so now it's just like evaluate. So what you're going to do is you're going to evaluate this equation and see what 0 will give you. So when you get this 0 and plug it in, the number that you come out will be the y value, and you'll get an ordered pair. So if I plug in 0, I'm going to say y equals negative 3 times 0 plus 1. Well, anything times 0 is 0. So your answer here would just be y equals 1. So I have that. Then that means my ordered pair is 0, 1. Now I'm going to go do it with 2 and find out what its partner would be. So I'd have y equals negative 3 times negative 2 plus 1. Well, a negative 3 times a negative 2 would be 6 plus 1. So at negative 2, the answer would come out to be 7. So the ordered pair would be negative 2, 7. If I plug in 1 for the x value, I'll have y equals negative 3 times 1 plus 1. So negative 3 times 1 would be negative 3, and a negative 3 and a positive 1 So this ordered pair is 1, comma, -2. Now, each of those points could be plotted, and if you've done it correctly, they should line up and make a straight line. Now, if I only did 2 points, geometry, one of the postulates you learn in geometry in the very beginning is that any 2 points that you have, you'll always be able to connect them with a straight line. But here, because we're trying to do some algebra to get the other point values here and to get the partner that goes with it, if we make a math mistake and I only use 2 of these points, I'll have a straight line. But if one of those is wrong, I won't know. By having a third point, it becomes your check value, and it helps you know that you've got your answer right, because they would all have to line up. So if I have my points here, I'm going to take this equation and I'm going to plot it. So I'm going to have 0, so x is 0, y is 1. So I'm going to go up 1 space. Now if I number these, that might help a little bit. Count them by 2s. Okay, so 0, 1. Now the next point would be at -2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 would be just a little bit higher. It would be right about right there. So I could draw a line and connect those two together, but I may have made a mistake in my arithmetic, and if one of those is not correct, I wouldn't know. So this third point has to line up with those two, and then I know I had all of them correct. So I'm going to go +1 and down 2, and then when I line those up, you can see that those points will line up and form a straight line. Now when you're working on with pencil and paper, you need to get you a straight edge so that you can connect those dots together and you'll have a straight line to be able to draw with. So draw your straight line, extend it all the way through the points, and then label the equation on the line. So I'm going to go back up here and pull up this equation, and I'm going to turn my page and write y equals -3x plus 1. So there's my equation on the line. Now, because I'm going to go ahead and put another one on here, what I need to do is I have to label it so I know which one goes to what. Now I'm going to go back over here and I have a different equation. So I'm going to take this equation and do the same thing. I'm going to put in a 0 where I see x. So I'm going to have 4 times 0 plus 3y equals 12. So that's going to just be 0. So I'll end up with 3y equals 12. And divide both sides by 3. So y equals 4. So one of the points on the graph will be at 0, 4. Okay, the next point, I'm going to go stick in a 3 where I see x. So I'm going to say 4 times 3 plus 3y equals 12. So this is 12 plus 3y equals 12. Well, then those 12s are just going to subtract off, and I'll get 3y equals 0. So divide by 3, that means y would have to be 0 here. So that point will give me y equals 0. Okay, my last point, I'm going to plug in a -3 right there. So I have 4 times -3 plus 3y equals 12. This will be a -12 plus 3y. Now that's not going to cancel out, so I have to add 12 to both sides. And I get 3y equals 24. I'm going to divide by 3, and y equals 8. So that's my last point. So now I have those 3 points, and I can plot those on the graph, and I'm hoping that I did all the numbers right, and those should all 3 line up. Now this one has a 0 in it, and this one has a 0 in it. So if we go back to that last page, we know that those 2 points are going to be kind of special, because if it has a 0 in it, it's going to be one of the intercepts, which means it's going to be on an axis. So now I'll take 0, 4, and so it's going to have a y number. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to be up here. 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 0 will be right there. And negative 3, 8. So 1, 2, 3, up 8. Well, that's 7, so 8 is going to be even higher. So yes, those points will all line up, and then I can connect the dots. I'll use these two main ones that work better, and they will, negative 2, negative 3 would be right here. So there's where they would be, and yes, they will all line up. So now I'll draw that line, and to distinguish between the two lines, I'll write 4x plus 3y equals 12. So there's my two lines, and I have the information. I have points on all of them. This would be 0, 4. This one would be 3, 0. And this would be negative 3, 8. So now on your homework, okay, sometimes they'll ask you to find 3 points. They'll plug them in. You'll find 3 points by plugging in values. Okay. Now on your software on homework, okay, online, of those 3 points, you'll only use 2 of them, because they're going to check you each way and make sure that you get, so if you do these online and you have to find points, you're going to find 1 point, and then they're going to say, okay, yeah, that's right, check. And then you'll find the second point, that's right, check. And then you'll find a third point, that's right, check. And then only 2 of those will have to be on the graph for you to draw the line. So online, only 2 of the points will be needed to graph, but they're going to make you check to make sure that you've done them correctly. Okay, so right here on the notes I put it, for online homework you may be asked to find 3 points for the table, but only have to plot 2 of those for the graph. Then draw your line using those 2 points. So any of the 2 points that you have. Now, there are other ways to graph depending on what the equation looks like. Alright, when an equation is in what we call standard form, so notice the coefficients of x and y are just going to be whole numbers here, and this will be a number, and it's not a 0. You can use what we call the intercepts method, because intercepts have a 0 in one of the places. So this problem will give me the y-intercept because I'm going to get a y number. Okay, so underneath this, put you a little note, y-intercept, because I'm going to have a y number right there. And this would be an x-intercept because it's going to have an x number right there. So what you're going to do is you're just going to plug in zeros. Up here, you plugged in 3 numbers, just 3 random numbers. Over here, you're just going to plug in zeros. So one of the times you're going to plug the 0 in for x. So I'll have 4 times 0 plus 2y equals negative 6. Well, that's still 0. So that's gone. Then I just have 2y equals negative 6. I'm going to divide by 2. So y equals negative 3. Okay, so up here, I'm going to have a point at 0, negative 3. I can't just write y equals 3. I have to make it an ordered pair. So down here, I'm going to go, there's 0, 1, 2, 3. So there's my 0, negative 3 is on the y-axis. It's a y-intercept. Then I'm going to go do the same thing, but this time I'm going to put the 0 in for the y spot. So I have 4x plus 2 times 0 equals negative 6. Then I've got 4x equals negative 6. Divide by 4, divide by 4. So x equals negative 6 over 4. And if I divide that out, or because we're trying to plot on a graph, you can go ahead and use your calculator and divide that out. It'll be negative 1.5. So here, negative 1.5. Now, On graphs that you're doing on your own, you'll be able to plot points like that, so it's okay to get a fraction. But on the graphs you're doing online, unless that grid is divided into lots of spaces, they won't give you a number that shouldn't come out to be a whole number. So now here, my x-intercept is a -1.5. So this is -1, this is -2. So my y-intercept should be right in between, should be right there. Now I got 2 points, and because they're intercepts, mathematically they're easy to find. And so we can be pretty sure that those two are right, and we'll just kind of say, yep, we think they are, because I can multiply by 0 pretty easily. So here we're going to label the equation 4x plus 2y equals -6. So here's the thing. When it's in standard form and you've got ax plus by equals c, and it's where the x and y are on the same side and it's equal to a number, this works pretty quick. Because really what you can do is if x is 0, I can just cover up the x and solve what's left. Divide both sides by 2, I'll get -3. If the y value is going to be 0, I'll just cover up that y. Divide both sides by 4, it'll come out to be 1.5. So this is a problem. This was where you don't have to do a lot of math work to do it. But here's one note. For online homework, you can use this to graph when it says graph the line. This method works best when the c value is divisible by both a and b. So like here, 6 can divide by 2 evenly, but 6 does not divide by 4. So online, you won't be able to graph 1.5 correctly. So what you need to have to do is make sure that the number that's in the C spot, this number right here, can divide by both of these two numbers right there. Okay, there's 2 other special cases. When you have an equation that just has one variable, so I have a y, and then it's just equal to some number. Okay, it doesn't have an x in the equation. It just says y equals. Okay, the line is going to be horizontal through whatever that point is on the y-axis. So here, if y is equal to 2, I'm going to go up on the y-axis and I'm going to find that number. And I would just draw a horizontal line. Now, in the overall meaning of it, it says we want ordered pairs that line up somewhere along this line so that all of the y values have to be 2's. So every y value that I choose has to have a 2. That will make them line up horizontally across the page. So you can pick just some random numbers. So if I pick 2 for x, that's going to put me right there. Okay, if I pick -1 for x, that's going to put me right there. If I pick -5 for x, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's going to put me right there. And you can see as I accumulate points that have 2's at the y value, they're all going to line up and they will be horizontal across the page. Okay, so the line will be horizontal through the point, and it's going to go through this point, 0, 2. Okay, whatever that number is, if that's the number right there, it's going to be 0, 2 on your graph. Okay, and it's going to be on the y-axis. So here it says, okay, graph for me y equals -4. Let me go ahead and graph this one we just did. So if I graph this one, this would be y equals 2. Let's put some arrows on it and make it a line. So now I want to see y equal -4. Well, go down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put you a dot where y is a -4, and then you're just going to draw a horizontal line through it. And there is your graph for y equals 4. Okay, the next one over here, that one's done. Now we want to do y equals 3. So I'm going to go up where y, on y, where it's at 3, right here. And then I'm just going to draw a horizontal line through it. And I'm going to label it y equals 3. So if it's a y equals line, y equals anything, y equals any number, that's what the A stand for. A is any number, but it's a spot on the y-axis, okay? Then you just draw a horizontal line through it. Now, what's the reverse of that? Well, if it says x equals some number, well, the opposite of going this way would have to go vertically, okay? It would have to go up and down. So, x equal line is a vertical line. A y equal line is a horizontal line. And you have to just remember this. There's no way, no secret I can do to tell you how to, no little poem or fancy words that make it work out. Okay, so if x is a -3, they're saying every ordered pair has to have -3 for its x values. So -3, -3, -3. Now, any y value will work, but we just have to have x values be 3. So let's say I want -3, 0. And I want -3, -4. And -3, 6. Now, when I line those points up, as long as x is -3, there's -3, 0. There's -3, -4. And there's -3, 6. So when I line them up, it's going to be a vertical line. Notice it goes through the number. It goes through -3. There's my -3. Okay, it goes through -3 on the graph. So this would be -3, 0. And it's going to be on the x-axis. So now I'm just going to go to that number that they're telling me they want x to be. So I'm going to go out there and draw me a vertical line, and I'll write x equal -3 on it. So over here it says give me a graph for x equals 2. Now understand, this is not solving an equation to get this answer. This is a location on a grid. So the x equal 2 has to do with the coordinates on the grid for you. So x equal 2 would be right here. And I want to draw a vertical line through it so that every point that's on this line would have an x coordinate of 2. So this would be x equals 2. Okay, our other point, our other graph is saying graph x equal -5. So I'm going to go out on my x-axis and find -5 would be right here. Then I'm going to graph. And there's my line. Okay? Now, the rest of this packet, the rest of this set of pages has some practice problems. We're going to work these out in class, but if you are not in class, I encourage you to work on these on your own, and then you would be able to do these. So I'm not going to work these on video, but this is practice for you. So I hope this helps you.